Hello and welcome. I am Cyril Stober. Nigeria, like other countries, has continued to respond to the multi-sectoral issues thrown up by the novel coronavirus through numerous measures, massive enlightenment campaigns, stepping up testing capacity, increasing the number of care centers for those infected, a lockdown, promoting public and individual hygiene practices, as well as non-pharmaceutical measures to stem the spread of COVID-19. Now, the federal government has also put out a number of palliative measures to mitigate the impact of the pandemic on citizens, especially the highly vulnerable. Today, our focus is on the palliatives and the organ of government concerned with alleviating the sufferings of citizens, not only affected by the ravages of COVID-19, but also those challenged by other crises and disasters. The Ministry of Humanitarian Affairs, Disaster Management and Social Development. Sadiya Umar Faroug is the Minister, and she joins me on the program. Minister, thanks for being here.
Thank you very much, Cyril, for having me.
Right, it's 1 year now. This ministry was created in August 2019. And so it's 1 year already. So let's start off by looking at how it has been this past 1 year and how you have managed the affairs of this ministry.
Yes, Cyril, it's been 1 year and it's like yesterday. I'm just realizing that time flies so fast. As you rightly said, it's 1 year ago that this ministry was created by His Excellency President Muhammad Buhari. So let me first of all express our gratitude to Mr. President for establishing this Ministry of Humanitarian Affairs, Disaster Management and Social Development. And also to thank him immensely for finding me worthy to entrust me with this all-important ministry. So far, the 1 year of our existence as a ministry has been both challenging and rewarding. Challenging in the sense that being a new ministry and the programs were domiciled in other MDAs, hitherto, now bringing them under one umbrella for effective coordination and supervision. You have to put a lot of things in place to achieve that. And rewarding in the sense that when I visit the field and I see people, their emotions, their happiness by the federal government intervention on how we have responded to their plights gives me really a sense of fulfillment that at least we are serving humanity. So it has been a kind of mixed feeling, and I would say we thank God for that.
All right, challenging you say, but in fact, no one could have imagined that shortly after the creation of this ministry, you would have to deal with one of the most challenging issues, and not just a local issue this time around. It's a global matter that you had to deal with. Now, here was the ministry tackling the issue of the Northeast, and all the displaced persons there. And no one imagined that there would be something even bigger than that that would threaten the entire globe. And that's talking about COVID-19. So how did you cope, at the start of this pandemic when it came into this country? How did you manage to rise to the challenge of COVID?
Well, Nigeria, like any other country, was really challenged by this pandemic. This is a global health emergency, and nobody expected it. It is termed a novel disease. And so also for the ministry, because we are faced with other challenges, as you rightly mentioned, the issue of displacement, the issues of disasters that occur every now and then. And then now we are faced with this health emergency that has given birth to a humanitarian crisis as well. But we'll say we give thanks to Almighty Allah, because immediately this pandemic was declared a global health issue, we realized what the consequences of that will be. And then with the announcement of the lockdown, we know that many people are going to also fall into the vulnerable groups, apart from the ones that we already have. So Mr. President directed that the ministry should carry out certain special interventions to cushion the effect of this humanitarian emergency. And we did that with the full sense of responsibility. We took interventions to the states, and also we, doubled some of our interventions, especially in the areas of the social investment programs, specifically the JIP program and the conditional cash transfer, which is a normal routine, of the ministry. But Mr. President directed that we should give 2 months advance payment to these poor and vulnerable households that have been given this conditional cash transfer, which we effectively carried out. And also on the JIP, you may recall that it's a soft loan given to our small business holders, trader money, market people, as well as the small farmers, which we also give them 3 months moratorium on the loan. So that we've done. We've taken food relief to the states. We are giving also some food donations from the Nigerian Customs Service, which we deliver to all the states of the Federation for onward distribution to the poor and the vulnerable. We take interventions to the communities of persons living with disabilities, to the communities of the aged, and also some orphanages. So I will say we have effectively done that, and we have also, Mr. President also directed that we should continue to feed the school children even though they are at home. That is a very hot topic,
Right.
So when we started that. And that we have also effectively carried out in the 3 states of Lagos, Ogun, and FCT.
Okay. Well, yes, you rose to the occasion, but certainly not without some very difficult moments. And I'd like to take a few of these measures and see how you develop that. And some, of course, became quite controversial in the public space, particularly the question of the modified homegrown school feeding. Here was this pandemic, the government was forced to impose a lockdown in some parts of the country initially, and of course schools were closed. So people asked the question, how was it going to be possible to continue with the school feeding program? Would there be anything to show that it's done in a transparent and accountable manner? And that was one of the questions people kept asking. And some, of course, skeptics didn't believe that it could be done. So tell us, how did you go about carrying this mandate out?
Cyril, let me first of all say that that intervention was a directive by His Excellency President Muhammadu Buhari, that we should work with the state governments to come up with the best option on how to feed these children, even while schools were closed. Don't forget the objectives of feeding, government feeding primary school pupils. One is to increase enrollment. Two is to improve the nutrition of these children at that age. And three is to also improve the local economy of these communities. So it's a whole value chain intervention by way of supporting the cooks, to earn livelihoods, as well as the small farmers that provide these food crops to these cooks. So now we're faced with this issue of, children are at home while they were supposed to be in school.
Yeah.
And then Mr. President, in his wisdom, felt that we should continue to feed them. So we had consultations and discussions with the Nigerian Governors Forum, and we adopted that model of the take-home food ration to these children. We used the best data at our disposal. We also used the criteria for families. The NBS and the World Bank have given that a family, an average family, should have at least 6 members in that family. The parents and then 4 children. So now we decided to take in between. We took for each household where these children come from. Let's assume there are 3 of them that go to school. From 5 years to 9 years, So that was what the criteria we used by providing this food ration. Ordinarily, every child that is fed by the government is being fed with 70 naira of meal, 70 naira worth of meal per day. So if you multiply 70 naira by 20 days, that's supposed to be school days, if you, extract the weekends, it comes to about 1,400 naira. If you times that by 3 children, it comes to about 4,200 or thereabout. So this is what we came up with to feed, to buy food worth this amount of money per month for these children to their households, because every child has a household.
Right.
And every child lives within a community. You identify these households using their school registers, because for every child that is registered in a school, he must have the address of the house he comes from. He also must have at least a contact of either his parent or his guardians. This we did together with the state basic education commissions, SUBEB. So this is what we did, and we're able to do that. For transparency and accountability, we have engaged the services of government anti-corruption agencies to be part of these interventions. We have engaged the services of DSS, ICPC, EFCC. We have also engaged NGOs and CSOs to be part of it. We have engaged the services of the World Food Programme, who are our technical, support to this program. And mind you, Cyril, it's not only Nigeria that has done this. Currently, UK gives £15 of voucher, food voucher, to indigent school children. Liberia does the same, and other countries of the world during this pandemic. So it's not something that is not obtainable. Of course it is. And this is how we went about it. And as I mentioned earlier, we started the pilot programs with FCT, Lagos, then Ogun. And so far we have recorded a lot of successes. For FCT, there were gaps because it was the first time we were doing it. We had challenges, but we, made up for those challenges in the subsequent states. And you need to see the testimonies of these parents and even the children that are being fed, with this intervention. They're very happy and they feel, a sense of belonging. So there's transparency, there's accountability. This is, we're given directives and we carried out these directives to the best of our ability.
Something related to that is, people look at it and say, is this sustainable? How long can this go on? Because schools are still shut, except for those that are, writing examinations and are in exit classes. The schools remain closed. And this process will continue.
Well, we didn't anticipate this. Nobody thought this was going to happen. And we thought even after the lockdown that at least things will ease up and schools will resume. But here we are, still schools are locked down. But this is a period that is they're supposed to be ordinarily, under normal circumstances, schools are supposed to have been closed for the long vacation. So we're taking that because children are supposed to be at home originally, not because of the pandemic or because there's lockdown. Now, there's no lockdown anywhere. Things have eased up, So for now, you
had to suspend that.
We have suspended it.
Now, if by any chance the period within which pupils are to be at home for normal holidays expires, would you still revert?
We will continue. We will continue. And as long as Mr. President gives us the go-ahead, we will.
All right. We will return to the issue of the homegrown school feeding. But beyond the children, quite a number of families and households were seriously hit by this pandemic and the lockdown as well. People could not go out, and there were so many vulnerable people, especially those who depended on a daily economy. And so, how did you reconcile that? Because you have a register of vulnerable people, but with this pandemic, that more than doubled or even tripled.
Well, Cyril, you can only do your best, honestly. Like I said, nobody anticipated this, but we have to make emergency provisions for this kind of eventualities. Now we have a register. That register is for poor and vulnerable households. But because of this pandemic, people have become poor, especially the urban poor, people who really rely on a daily wage to earn a living. Now, Mr. President, in his wisdom, also directed that we should expand that social register by 1 million to also capture the urban poor. But it's a process. There has to be monetary provision for it because this is a new thing now. Unlike the homegrown school feeding program, already monies have been provided, have been budgeted for. Now, that has to be captured into the Economic Sustainability Committee chaired by His Excellency, the Vice President, before it was presented before Council. Council approved. Now it has to be taken to National Assembly. The whole budget has to be taken to the National Assembly. We just got the approval early this month or so. So now we are in the process of that rapid response, targeting this urban poor using telecalls and BVNs of these people that have a bank account that's 5,000 and below. These are people who are identified going by the poverty index, as well as people who recharge their phones between 100 naira and below. This is the criteria for this urban poor now. Right. But well, we are in the process. We have not started giving out this intervention.
All right, Minister, I brought this up because it's quite important, and I would like to ask you what you feel when you see reports in the public space, and particularly in some media, including social and the traditional media, where people come out and say, look, we have not received anything. We thought the government said there was going to be palliatives. Nobody has given us anything. We want you to explain that.
Well, Cyril, I can understand people's frustrations and concerns. And they are genuine. But the fact is that we cannot, provide for every poor person in this country within this period. We're talking about almost 100 million people, considering the limited resources that even government has at its disposal. Government is doing its best, and two things I always tell myself. I am also guided by these two things. Two principles, so to speak. The principle of my conscience and that is serving God. And then the principle of humanity, which is service, my passion to serve humanity. Right. I'm doing my best. It's expected. But time will tell, and history will judge us on what we have done.
Well, you're not discouraged by things like that?
I'm not, because the people I'm serving, when I see them each time, as I mentioned earlier, this time I visit the field, these testimonies, really gives me satisfaction.
All right. You think that if only people took some time out to try to understand how the system works, then they might just be more sympathetic to what's happening? I mean, everyone comes out there and says, look, we want palliatives. In fact, everybody demands palliatives.
They do. They call me Madam Palliatives. They say also, but I always try to make them understand that this palliative is not meant for every Nigerian. They are palliatives meant for the poor and the vulnerable.
All right.
Within our societies. And even with that, we're still battling with limited resources. So we just appeal for understanding and patience, and also prayers, so that everybody will not need to have really palliatives from government.
All right. Well, we'll take a breather from the COVID challenge at this point in time, but we'll look at other aspects of what your ministry has been doing, and in the line of the social investment program, and that too has come with its own challenges as well, particularly the question of the end power, and that's what we want you to address now. Payment challenge, the beneficiaries, the duration, and the fact that we're talking about a batch A and B, and there's so much talk about C. Let's begin from.
Yes, the Empower program, I can understand, has dominated the public domain. It's a program that government, as part of the social investment programs that has come on board since 2016. It started with batch A of 200,000 and batch B of 300,000. The design of the program is that they will be exited after 24 months. So it's a 2-year program. When we came on board, we realized that the batch A had, exceeded their time of exit because of some exigencies. And so we tried to see how we can, have an exit plan. For the batch B, they were due last month. So they were on course. And we need to enroll more beneficiaries because there are many waiting, with over 40 million youths into the labor market, every year. It's quite a huge number. So I can understand those in the program, they have these fears of uncertainty, what is going to happen to them when they are exited. But that is the design of the program. And like I said, we have to pave way for others to come.
24 months.
24 months. The batch A they have been on the program for over 40 months. So we exited them in June. We have a transition plan for them in place, where we have reached out to some MDS as well as the private sector to see how they can be absorbed, going through some processes as well. But also, it's interesting to know that out of these 500,000 empowered beneficiaries, about 109,000 of them have become entrepreneurs, meaning they are now economically self-reliant. They're entrepreneurs, they are even employers of labor. Some of them are even our aggregators now in the National Homegrown School Feeding Program. So you can see some people have taken full advantage of that government support and intervention, to be able to be something and get something. Now we are in the batch C. In the batch C, we have just closed their portal. We have about 5.1 million applicants. Very soon, by next week, we are going to start the selection process, which is going to be observed by due diligence. Only qualified applicants will be enrolled into the program. And as we move on, we'll keep the public updated, as well as the applicants themselves.
Well,
now I know we have issues with the payments.
Okay.
When we came, these programs were transferred to the ministry, yes. They used to be under budget and national planning. Their payment process was between budget and national planning and the Office of the Accountant General of the Federation. We had gone through processes of transfer of the programs, taking over, understanding the programs. So during those periods, we had delays in payment. Because as a minister and a permanent secretary, we need to understand what we're, putting our signatures on. So we had the first issue of delayed payment. Now we also have the issues of delayed payment because of the payment platform that has been changed from Remitter to IPPIs, to GIFMIS, which also took some delays. And we're still having these issues of reconciling even the figures the numbers with the Office of the Accountant General of the Federation. From our own point of view, we have signed off all payments of Empower beneficiaries. And I will say this and say it again, except for the independent monitors that we just signed off their June payment now. But for Empower beneficiaries, Batch A, we have signed off their payments. Now the issue is with the Office of the Accountant General because they are going through some reconciliation. Some names have appeared in other payment platforms, which we have asked them to submit to us. We hope that before the end of this week, we'll be able to know the names of those people that are also, because automatically if you are on GIFMI's platform and you are getting payment from another source, it will block you.
Right. So this is
the issue. This is not the issue of the Ministry of Humanitarian Affairs or the Minister of Humanitarian Affairs is not paying Empower. Not at all. I don't think a file spends more than a day, more than 24 hours on my desk. I have signed off. The Permanent Secretary has done his own. Now it is in the Office of the Act because they make the payments.
Right.
They have the payment platforms. So this is where we are. But I want to assure the Empower volunteers whose payment is being delayed because they are quite not volunteers, the monitors.
Right.
They're very small number that before the end of this month we'll finish the payment of this.
All right.
We effect their payments,
okay.
you know.
Going
So
back
we have exited Batch A and B.
Now, going
Now we
back
are
to the
going
question
into
of
the next
the
phase.
duration, you did say that Batch A had done about 40 months.
Precisely.
Certainly, you've learned one or two things about that. So, what are you putting in place to ensure that Batch C does not end up having
No,
this
we are
kind
putting all measures in place because I know what I went through because of this issue of exit. So now, anyone that is going to be onboarded onto this program will have to sign that he's going for the number of time or the specified period that we have decided. We will not add one day onto it.
Okay. Now, closely tied to this is the GEEP, I believe, the Government Enterprise and Entrepreneurship Program.
Yes, and the Government Enterprise and Empowerment Program is also one of the social investment programs that came on board 2016. This is a program that provides soft loans to our traders, market people, as well as our smallholder farmers. We have about 2.1 million beneficiaries of this program, and they are given these loans that ranges from 10,000, 50,000, and 300,000. I think for the traders it's 10,000. For the market money, it's 50, and then is the farmers that's 300,000. So this is also another empowerment program that supports this category of people, for them to engage in meaningful businesses, as well as to lift them out of poverty. So it's a laudable program, and the program was domiciled or was in collaboration with the Bank of Industry,
right?
Because they are the entity that can give credit facilities. So that was why they have to be, they were engaged or involved into the program. And I can tell you, we also have testimonies of people who have benefited from this program, and they are doing well. Last time I was in Lagos during the COVID, we also did another intervention by reaching out to other, beneficiaries that were in the platform, yet to be, onboarded. And you could see the joy and the happiness of these people who are determined to make a living.
With one of these programs, people have talked about a review, and you mentioned it yourself, Minister, the conditional cash transfer. COVID brought with it so many issues, and even that too was quite challenging. It wasn't just schools that were shut, banks were shut, and there were lots and lots of people who couldn't access anything through the normal systems. So how did you carry on? Because that led to so many complaints too about the conditional cash transfer.
Yes, Cyril. It came with a lot of issues as well. And I don't blame people, because it is about the first time that some people even knew there was such a program. And so there was a lot of misconception, a lot of misinformation, and people thought that we were just there to give out money. Many people didn't think that this program had been in existence since 2016. And it's a program that's in very close collaboration with the World Bank. So when Mr. President directed that we should give 2 months advance payment, I can remember it was my first intervention during the lockdown. We had to carry out that directive. It is a program that had been there. If not for the COVID, maybe people wouldn't have known there was such a program even. I went to flag off the program in Kwali Area Council. And I can remember banks were not completely locked down after a while. There was a period that banks were allowed to open up. I'm a member of the PTF on COVID-19. So we went to carry out that intervention, and people saw the way we gave out cash to these families, and there was a lot of uproars and all that. But that was what we met on ground. And it doesn't mean that there are no rooms for for improvement. What we are putting in place right now is to digitalize the process end to end, to make sure that whoever is a beneficiary of this program have a bank account,
right,
or at least mobile, phones that you can, pay them into using the mobile agents. This is what we're working on, and we hope that by next year we'll be able to digitalize the whole process of this conditional cash transfer.
One of the issues that
there will be accountability and trust.
Okay, that was one of the issues that was raised, and the matter of ensuring that where you're giving out cash, you have safety nets in place to ensure that the money was going to who it was meant to go to, and it was not just money, because some just saw the system and said, look, the ministry is giving out free money to people that it has identified, or to party faithful. Could you disabuse Nigerians' minds on that?
That is very, very untrue, because this conditional cash transfer, apart from the issue of giving out cash, I think is one of the most structured programs of the NCP, because it's a program that involves all the critical stakeholders. It's a program that involves the communities, their leadership, as well as different leaderships of the community, as well as the state governments. It's a federal government program, but the state government is fully involved into this program. Communities come together to identify which household is poor and vulnerable. And that is what goes into the National Social Register. And before you give out this money, it also, before you even, agree that this family is supposed to be given this support, about 3 or 4 groups within that community have to agree to that. So it's a well structured, process, and it's transparent. Now, when it comes to the National Social Register, it also goes through another process before it goes into the National Beneficiary Register. It is from that National Beneficiary Register that we take out these beneficiaries to pay them this money. And for every caregiver of a household, they are mainly women. They are the ones that have been identified. If you see the way we do it, it's women we give, except for very, exceptional situations or cases. So they come with an ID, and you scan that ID, and it reflects onto the mobile whatever that we're using to identify them. If it shows, yes, this is the person that we have in our system, like it says this is Cyril Stover, and from our own end it will show Cyril Stover. That's the only time that you are given that support. It means now you are the one that is really in that beneficiary register. So it's a program that is for the poor and vulnerable households in our societies. It has nothing to do with your political affiliation or religious background or tribal, affiliation. So I mean, it's a very well structured and objective program. It has nothing to do with all these allegations that I saying, but as I said earlier, time will tell. We're doing our best, and the people who are giving these interventions, they're happy with us, they're happy with the government.
Right. Well, there's hardly any aspect of the mandate of this ministry that would look at that we would not return to the issue of the global pandemic and how it has affected it, because before COVID you had so many things, your hands were full, so to speak, with so many other matters. The question of displaced people from the northeast, people who had suffered a lot owing to the banditry in parts of the country, and generally people who are vulnerable and need assistance, and those, of course, who had been devastated by natural disasters. How did this pandemic affect how you reach out to these various segments and how you carried out your work?
Well, Cyril, it goes with work. We had to intervene, and I'm sure you must have seen us in different places. We still went ahead to carry out these interventions. For example, in the Northeast, we had taken interventions even as regards to the COVID interventions, because we have built isolation centers in the camps. We have taken medical interventions through the Northeast Development Commission. We have provided operational vehicles to the military to support their activities in the Northeast. We have also provided food relief, non-food relief. So we continued, because this is what we are mandated to do. The mandate of the ministry is to formulate humanitarian policies, to provide effective coordination of humanitarian interventions, to ensure strategic disaster mitigation, preparedness and response, as well as to formulate and implement social protection programs in the country. So work must continue, whether there's pandemic or no pandemic, because these crises are there, or they will occur, or they had been in existence. And we have been effectively doing that in all parts of the country, either by way of responding to disasters when they occur, fire disasters, flooding, you know, or even by way of these humanitarian interventions that we take that are routine. We have agencies under the ministry that take humanitarian interventions in the area of food relief to all the IDP camps, official IDP camps, on monthly basis, and that is the National Emergency Management Agency, and that we have been doing.
You know, again, we'll come back to the issue of the pandemic. Yes, you have to carry on with your activities, but again, in carrying out your mandate, you have an eye on the advisory about, contacts, social contact, social distancing in this period. Now, how challenging is that? Because if you obviously have to
it's
distribute
really very
relief.
challenging, you know, Cyril, it's really very challenging. As a member of the Presidential Task Force on COVID-19, I very much know the implications of not observing these protocols. So for us, wherever we're going, we have even carried out sensitization and awareness campaigns through our agencies on the COVID protocol, you know. But sometimes you just cannot help because it's an attitudinal issue. You know, when you move to the States, you see as if they don't even know there's COVID. We try as much as possible to maintain the social distances and all the other distancing and all the other protocols. But what is most important to this particular group of people is the intervention that we're bringing to them.
Well, let's talk briefly about your partnership and collaboration with other bodies. I've seen that in this business of responding to humanitarian affairs, you can hardly do this on your own. So what's the level of your collaboration then?
Well, we take that very seriously, collaboration and partnership. One of our key priority areas is on strategic partnerships, and we've been trying to build on those partnerships that are in existence and then to reach out to more. The UN body, for instance, they are our partners. Almost all the UN agencies, we are working with them under the umbrella of the United Nations resident humanitarian coordinator in the country. We work with other development partners. Within the country, we have MDAs that we are working with. We must work with. We're working with Ministry of Interior, especially on issues of refugees, stateless persons, trafficked persons, because they are in charge of exit and entry. We also work with Ministry of Foreign Affairs, with Ministry of Finance, Budget and National Planning, Ministry of Youth Development, Ministry of Women Affairs, Ministry of Education, because as it is now, we are partnering with Ministry of Education on the alternate school program,
Right.
where we want to incorporate this almajiris into the formal, so to speak, sector of education by way of, supporting the malams through our various interventions, and then so that the children will be off the street,
Right.
and we support them to come. So it's one of those collaborations we're having with me. So you cannot do it alone. There must be partnership, there must be collaboration. And we're doing that. It's one of our key priority, area.
Now, some look at the Ministry of Humanitarian Affairs and say that there are so many key agencies which you supervise. And that's a daunting task, because people are wondering that one ministry has suddenly become a super ministry, and quite a number of agencies that you supervise. How is that task of supervision carried out?
Well, Cyril, let me first of all mention the number of agencies that we have in this ministry. We have 4 agencies and 2 programs. We have the National Emergency Management Agency. We have the National Commission for Refugees, Migrants and IDPs. We have the Northeast Development Commission. We have the National Agency for the Prohibition of Trafficking in Persons, NAPTIP. Then we have the SDGs and then the National Social Investment Programs. So there are 6.
And these are huge.
We have ministries, Cyril, that have 40-something agencies, 30-something, 20-something. But the most important thing that we should look at in this particular matter is the issue of the interconnectivity of these agencies with the ministry. There are agencies that deal with humanitarian issues. They cannot be better in any other place than this Ministry of Humanitarian Affairs. And that is what the government saw and felt, that all these humanitarian agencies and social development programs should be under one umbrella for effective coordination and supervision. That is the essence. They didn't bring any agency under the Ministry of Petroleum or Ministry of Works or Transport under this ministry. All these agencies are agencies that deal with humanitarian issues. They are interconnected. They have similar roles to play. So it will be in the best interest of government that these agencies are under a ministry that will supervise them, coordinate them, so that there will be synergy. There will be complementarity in their, responsibilities, rather than, fighting each other. All this interagency rivalry. Now, when we have an issue that has to do with trafficking in persons, and we're supposed to evacuate people, I would just, we'll talk, NAPTIP is on top of it. I'll ask Nema, please support NAPTIP. And it is done.
All right.
So I think this is the best thing that can happen to this country, by creating a ministry that will coordinate these agencies.
Right. Well, ministers will begin to wind down. It's been 1 year, and you say it's been a challenging 1 year. And I believe you can expect that the years ahead would be challenging, even more so, especially in view of what's happening the world over. Post-COVID, what are your projections? Because certainly you would find many more families will become vulnerable and many more would require support. What are your projections?
Let me say challenging and rewarding, as I mentioned earlier. It is rewarding serving humanity. But the challenges will not be peculiar to this country alone. So we are working on building resilience around the social safety nets of our people for the future. And we have a lot of programs that we are putting in place to see that we build the resilience of these vulnerable groups, to equip them, for any future eventuality or for their future endeavors. This is at the front burner of our plans going forward post-COVID.
Well, Minister, just before we round off, there's just this small matter which we would like you to clarify. In our discussion so far, you've mentioned it, that it's not possible for the government to dish out these palliatives to every single citizen. Certainly not every single Nigerian citizen, and not even every vulnerable group. But then quite recently there were stories, particularly in the social media, that you said every family in this country had received palliatives. We'd like you to clarify if you actually said anything like that.
Cyril, I didn't. It is a very impossible ambition for anybody to say or to even think that he can give palliatives to every Nigerian. what I said at that briefing, it was during the PTF briefing, and I have my briefing notes, was that I have delivered palliatives to every state of this country for onward distribution to the poor and the vulnerable. To every state, I have taken palliatives, except one state till today, if they want, their palliative is there. So for every state, as far as I'm concerned, we have taken palliatives for onward distribution to the poor and the vulnerable. This was what I said, but I was misquoted, you know, and I came back to clarify on the same platform that it's just humanly impossible for Nigeria to say that it can feed every Nigeria, or it can give every Nigeria palliative. I don't think even our budget can accommodate that. So
Yes, Sadiya Umar Faroug, Minister of Humanitarian Affairs, Disaster Management and Social Development. It's been interesting talking to you. We're glad that you've come again to talk about these issues, and we thank you for coming on One on One.
Thank you so much, Cyril, for having me, and good to see you again.
And as we usually say these days, stay safe as you carry out your mandate.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
You.
And that's our program today. We thank you for being with us. Next week we'll be back with One on One. I am Cyril Stover. Stay safe.